Hey, thanks for being here. My name's Manny, and this is Manny Studio, where we make music, talk about music, and whatever else I freaking fill my days with. So, my partner Amelie and I recently got a grant to make an album of Julius Eastman's music reimagined for the guitar. If you don't know anything about Eastman, he was a super forward thinking composer, and I'll put some links below where you can learn some more about him and listen to his music. I might even make a more dedicated video to him as we get closer to the release of our album. But the whole project was kind of inspired by this one piece he wrote called Buddha. It's extremely free, and the score was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It looks like this. There's very little to no information about how we're supposed to interpret this piece of music, and all you can see is 20 staffs of music with pitches in them, and you don't really know if you're supposed to play them all at once as harmonies or one after another. And it was because of this open-ended freedom that I really wanted to showcase how you can interpret this piece differently every time you look at the score. I ended up making 4 different versions of this piece for the album. They consisted of different interpretations of electric guitar and electronics, classical guitar and electronics, classical guitar processed through the microcosm, and even one for 20 electric guitars with an EBow. But for this video, I really wanted to focus on the version I made for classical guitar and electronic. Throughout the process of making this album, I got really obsessed with generative music, and I wanted to see if I could kind of incorporate that in this album. I ended up taking all the pitch information and I created a generative backing track in Ableton that I then played classical guitar over. While I can't show you too much of the music I'm about to release, here's a little snippet of the backing track without the guitar part. The goal was to create a generative track where I would input the information given to me in the score and then kind of let Ableton play itself by using things like LFOs, probability, arpeggiators, and so much more. So for the sake of this video, I ended up creating a new track to kind of showcase these techniques. Funnily enough, I really dig what I ended up making and I turned it into a full song. I'll put a link in the description where you can check out my track on Bandcamp. Okay, so we're going to start off by talking about probability, the chance that something will or will not happen. We have our chord mapped out over here, and if you look at your bottom left, you have your velocity, little tab there, and then this is going to be chance. Chance is kind of where you can set the idea of probability. Now, here I have it set to 50%, meaning every time this chord gets triggered, there's a 50% chance that these notes will get hit. You could apply this in a whole bunch of different contexts. Whereas here I have it in the harmonic context, you could also lay out a whole melody and then assign each note a percentage. By doing that, you kind of then create an ever-evolving pattern that changes every time you play it and becomes a lot less predictable. Something I really like to do is to mess with the probability functions of a melody or chord, and then record that into a resampling track, so that way if there's anything that I like that comes up, I could always just have that loop already. So how can we take this further? Well, we're going to talk about this arpeggiator we see right here. Now let me turn off these LFOs for now. And you can see that if I take off my arpeggiator and just play this, there's not much really happening. But if I turn this on, you could then mess with your rate. But let's say you don't want to be turning that knob all by yourself. Well, over here I have 2 LFOs. One is mapped to the gate and one is mapped to the offset function of this arpeggiator. But let me show you kind of how to do that. So here we have our LFO, and you're going to click map. And so we don't want to change the rate knob by ourselves. So we're going to get our LFO to be changing our rate for us. And obviously this is really drastic, so you could own it into whatever you like. And then you end up with something like okay, so let me show you another fun thing I like to do. Over here, if we go to our melody, let me turn off all of this. I have a very simple melody over here. And I felt like it was just missing something. So what I ended up doing was I added chord to it. And what chord does is going to harmonize whatever your MIDI notes are to the semitones that you set. Which is really cool. But then within the context of a song, sometimes you have the issue of having it fit within the key. So what you need here is scale. And scale is essentially Ableton's quantizer. And then the way I finished it off was I had my Portal granular synthesis plugin being controlled, the delay being controlled by this LFO. And you could see the knob going with the LFO. I really love using LFOs because you could create rhythm with it, evolving textures and effects. You can modulate your sounds. You could pretty much have endless LFOs modulating to your imagination's content. I see a lot of people really like to use LFOs to also modulate attacks. You can create an evolving plucky versus pad sound. In this track, I used a lot of it to control delays and reverbs. And there's really no end to what you can do with LFOs in Ableton. Just have fun with it. So something I did in this track that I really didn't use before was drum racks, but I use it in a different way that I didn't really know was possible. So I downloaded this LA Atmos Spitfire pack, and I created a drum rack with it. But then within this, as you can see, I added the chance probability to each hit. So there's like a 74% chance that each time it triggers, you'll actually get it to play one of these samples. On top of that, I even added this little random guy over here, which is adding another element of chance to it throughout 16 choices. Now, what I ended up doing is I put these 16 samples on a drum rack, and I macroed the start time to one macro over here, and I have an LFO that's controlling that start time. So every time a sample plays, it's going to start at a different point every time. The way we do that, let's see if I remember now. Okay, so the way we do this is you click map over here, and let's say you want to map the attack. So you're going to click attack and map. So now this macro control is going to be mapping the attack, right? So now let's say you're going to add it with the second sample, so on and so forth, as many as you want to add. And then once you do that, you can then assign an LFO to control that entire macro, and it will always change every time it gets triggered. So just within this drum rack, you have so many different elements of chance happening at once. If I go over here to my wavetable and I start turning all of these things off, play it. And let's see how it changes with all these presets. So I have the two LFOs controlling the reverb and the master dry wet of the Portal plugin, and then another LFO controlling the division over here of echo. And then within the wavetable, you have all these different degrees of chance, which is even further pushed with random. So let me just give you a quick idea of how it sounds. So if you made it this far in the video, thanks so much for sticking around. If you want to see some more stuff like this, then make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. And if you want to keep up to date with the release of my new Julius Eastman album, then make sure to follow me on social media, where I'll be posting some more updates and informative content like this video.